he said that it's inconceivable that if a couple comes in that they would allow their wife to sit beside a colored man.
Charles Daniels, a black Calgarian, buys a ticket to watch King Lear at this theater, once known as the Sherman Grand. His stub says he's seated in H3, but he's denied that seat and pointed to the balcony in the colored section. What happened next made him a civil rights pioneer, whose protest came over 30 years before Viola Desmond was dragged out of a theater in Nova Scotia. Daniels fought for his seat in H3. Daniels went to the theater on February 3rd, 1914, just a few years after black settlers began moving to Alberta.
So speeches were given such as we want no dark spots in Alberta. Calgary City Council, they refused black people to live in certain areas.
Black Albertans were segregated, banned from bars, swimming pools, and other public places. Cities had limits on the number of black settlers, and eventually the federal government banned black immigration. The theater offered Daniels a refund, but he refused and spoke with a manager. He soon launched a court case asking for $1,000 in damages. Bashir Mohammed says he was floored when seeing the transcripts of Daniels and the theater's proprietor, William Sherman.
You don't see that honesty so much. Like, even though people said those things, it's interesting because in the hour-long interview, for the first bit, he doesn't talk about the racism, like his racism.
Mohammed says the transcript also tells the story using Daniels' words, a rare perspective in history. Daniels won his case because the defendants and the lawyers for the theater did not show up. The judge did give Sherman a second chance to defend himself, but there's no evidence that it went to a trial. Bashir says there's a possibility they settled out of court.
But what this case shows is that if anything, Alberta was ahead of the curve when it comes to our civil rights history. We had 3 civil rights cases that I could find so far in Alberta's history.
Mohammed wants Daniels' story shared. He says he never learned about black Alberta while going to school in the province.
I think it would be very powerful for a young black kid growing up to see a story like Daniels and to identify with it, because it shows that someone like him was responsible for building this province, but also responsible for the civil rights that they have.
Mohammed says throughout his research, he had not found an earlier civil rights case in Western Canada. This came 50 years before the March on Washington and Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech. Mohammed's extensive research on Daniels' story was originally published online on The Sprawl. In Calgary, Crystal Ladaris, City News.